All right, so today's video, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be discussing low reps versus high reps, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison, pros and cons of each, and just dive into my overall philosophy with how this stuff works. So the first thing I want to start off with is that there is no clear-cut definition of what low reps are, and there's no clear-cut definition of what high reps are either, especially high reps. Like low reps, we can all agree anything below maybe 5 is low reps. Most people kind of assume that, but then again, there's some people that think anything below 10 is low reps, and there's some people that think anything above like 5 is high reps. You know what I mean? So it depends if you ask a powerlifter, a strength athlete, or a bodybuilder. There's a bunch of different ways to come up with these ideas. So I'm going to go into basically my idea and my philosophy when it comes to low reps and high reps, and how I define each of these, and how I think you can best utilize it in your own training program. So there is no clear-cut definition of what low or high reps are, but understanding rep ranges and the utility of them is useful. With that being said, 8 to 20 is the rep range that 99% of hypertrophy training should fall under, and I'd personally classify anything below that range as low reps, so 7 reps or beneath, I'd call that low reps. Anything above that, I would assess as a high rep set, so 21 or higher is going to be a high rep set. So rep ranges are arbitrary at first glance when you look at the science. However, when you start to train, you'll notice the importance of utilizing different ranges. So when you look at these studies and what the science shows, whether it's like, we've all seen the study where it's a set of 4 and then a set of 8 and a set of 12, all technically build the same amount of muscle on like an 8-week program or whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is very short term. Long term, we do need to be training in specific rep ranges for specific lifts, and I'll talk about that throughout this video. Certain lifts are suited better in these tiny little like benefits of using a specific rep range on a certain lift. They accumulate over time and get you better results basically forever. So that's why sometimes you do have to think longer term with this stuff. So certain lifts are better suited for reps closer to 8. Some lifts are best suited closer to 20. And some will fall somewhere in between. And this can be a little bit individual too, just based on tension curves of the lift and your own strength curve and how those combine when you're actually doing that lift. What I would say is training with less than 8 reps is not optimal for hypertrophy on 99% of lifts. The only lift I can think of that's more optimal for hypertrophy in this range is deadlifts, which I wouldn't recommend anyways for hypertrophy. So doesn't really matter there. The problem with going for less than 8 reps is that it requires a lot of warm-ups, and lifts that you generally use in this rep range will take a ton of your time and energy to warm up for, and you could be using those resources more optimally and more efficiently. So obviously the long warm-ups on the low reps isn't like the only downside to it, but that is a pretty big downside where, yeah guys, I mean, once you're squatting, benching, and deadlifting and doing these heavy compound lifts for basically heavy weight, it can take a long time. Like when I was at my peak deadlift strength, my deadlift sessions, it would be like an hour plus. Like they'd even last up to like an hour 15, because when you're calculating the rest between your sets, when you're calculating the warm-ups, and you always have these little aches and pains when you're powerlifting too, like you have to, whether it's roll out or stretch or whatever, it's just not quite worth it in my opinion. Beginners, that's a different story, but most lifters, once you're past the beginner phase, some of this stuff does have its drawbacks for sure. Low reps are only beneficial for certain compound lifts. You will be missing lots of benefits by using low reps on most lifts. The gains you make off of different rep ranges will be the same, at least in the short term, but we want to minimize downsides and maximize benefits. So we need to be more thoughtful than just saying it's arbitrary. The problem with high reps is that you'll start to run into other issues once you're above 20 reps. So getting a pump and a burn is a good thing, but when that's what causes you to stop a set, not mechanical tension, you're stopping short of true failure and you're leaving gains on the table. Sticking between 8 and 20 reps will allow you to get the pump and the burn, but failure will typically be due to mechanical failure. On other lifts, cardiovascular endurance is another limiting factor. Most of us know this, so I won't go in depth here. So to summarize everything that I just went over, low reps are generally bad because it requires a ton of warm up. There's a lot of times that you actually won't even be like feeling your muscle or getting a pump or getting a burn. And not that that's the end all be all to hypertrophy, but it definitely doesn't hurt as long as you're not using it in like an overkill sense like you would be in high reps, for example. So let's say we're doing a rep or a set with high reps. Now you risk some of those other downsides of training with high reps over 20 because you're getting to the point where certain muscle groups, like maybe your biceps, your shoulders are this way, even your quads, like those muscles they'll burn. They'll start to burn and you'll get a crazy pump. And if you're getting too big of a pump or you're burning too much and that causes you to stop the set, you're not actually stopping the set due to mechanical failure. So what we want to do is find that happy medium, which is generally going to fall into 8 to 20 reps, where you fail based on your strength, it's mechanical failure, but at the same time, you can get some of the benefits potentially of the pump and of the burn. And obviously we don't quite understand this stuff in science yet, but it definitely can't hurt. As long as you're not failing because of it, then you're pretty much good. And I'd actually recommend trying to get a pump and feel your muscle and have it burn a little bit. Again, not that it's like some crazy science proven method, but as long as you're under like 20 or 15 reps and above 8, you'll get that without letting that be what causes you to fail on that specific set. So to give you some practical advice here, different lifts are going to have different tension curves. Different lifts are going to have different ways that it kind of like burns your muscle. We all know that feeling when the muscle starts to burn over time and then we just can't take it anymore. If anyone's ever trained your calves or your shoulders, we all know how that works. So we need to find that happy medium. Every muscle and every lift is going to be different. So something like I do these one-arm lat pull downs on my cable machine, basically behind the camera. My lats don't burn at all whatsoever. So I can train that into higher rep in that range. Like I can do sets of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 and fail mechanically because the pump isn't that crazy. Like, yeah, it's a good pump, but I'm not like failing because it hurts because it's such a big pump or anything. And it's definitely not burning. So where it's a lift where I can really feel my muscle working and I'm trying to squeeze my lat and get a crazy stretch on it, it just makes sense because I can basically fail mechanically on a higher rep set to take that set to a higher rep. Now on something like, let's say I didn't come into today with an example for this one, but let's say like a side raise for my shoulders. Obviously, if you go too low on the reps here, your traps are just going to take over because the strength curve is terrible on lateral raises. Then again, if you go too high, since shoulders for most people are going to be a muscle that just burns like crazy and you'll stop because of the burn, we also risk going too high. We're all highly individual, so you're going to have to find that happy medium where you can go light enough where your traps don't take over and you can keep your good technique. But we're also going to have to make sure that we don't go too light to where we have to stop even if our reps are still going fast and smooth just because it burns. You know what I mean? So you have to experiment with this stuff. And I hope these little examples give you a little bit of an idea on how you can apply this to multiple lifts. And it all comes down, just like I said in my last video, to personal experience and personal experimentation with this stuff. Everybody's a little bit different, but there are certain factors that you have to take into consideration. So even if one lift, hypothetically, you could get the same muscle gains in 8 weeks if you went 5 reps or 15 reps, there are these little downsides, there are these little benefits that we want to make sure we either maximize if it's a benefit or minimize if it's a downside. So over the long term, we can get the most out of that lift and optimize our results. And it really is as simple as just thinking about it and doing a little bit of it experimenting. So with that being said, I did want to keep this video a little bit shorter. We're right at like the 9.5 minute mark right now. So I'm going to end it there. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'd be happy to have a little bit more of a discussion about this stuff. Thanks for watching.